Okay guys, this video is going to take us through the process of linking our drum kit to our starting screen. So as you can see here, this is the project I put up quite some time ago, which has the silly little drum that plays the horn noise. And what I need to do is create a landing screen first. So as you can see with this particular project, I've only actually got one scene going. So what I first need to do, and you guys should have already done this, is I need to insert a new scene. And that's my scene 2. Now, scene 2 will have your Joe's Drums Haven, and it'll have your name and all that stuff that's required from the assessment task. But for this particular instance, all I really need to do is make some sort of object that I can turn into a button. So I'm just going to make a little rectangle there, and that's going to be my button. Now, if you remember, for a little while now, because we've had the two scenes going, when we've gone to test, instead of using test, which we were using originally, we had to use test scene because otherwise it got all stupid. So if I go to into test now, it should do that silly thing where it jumps between the two and it doesn't make much sense. All right, and the reason why is we haven't told Adobe what to do about those two scenes. So it's just flicking between one and the other all the time. So the first thing I need to do is to create the button that effectively is going to take you from that landing screen through to the drum kit itself. So I've got that little rectangle there, and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to convert that to a symbol. So I can do that by converting to a symbol that way, or I could even modify and convert to symbol that way. Now, very important in this case that this is going to be called a button, and I'm going to label this start. All right. And with a capital S, you're going to find, because we have to do a bit of coding here, the name is very specific. So if you use start with a capital S, you'll have to use start with capital S everywhere. If you use start with a lowercase s, you'll have to use start with lowercase s everywhere. So given that the code I'm going to share with you has a capital S for start, I would suggest doing that. So I've created my symbol. Now, unlike with the drums, we don't have to double click on this symbol and go in and edit it. All right, but what we are going to do is the layer that it's on should be, the only thing that should be on that layer is that button, and I'm going to call that layer start as well. All right, and the last thing I'm going to do is when I click on that, over here, see where it says instance name? Sorry, I'll just click out of there again. When I click on my symbol, up here in the properties panel, I have instance name, and once again, I'm going to call that start with a capital S. All right. So now I have a situation where this button is called start, it's an instance of start, and it's on a layer called start. All right, seems like a lot of copying of the same process, but that's what's necessary for this to happen. So now what we need to do is on this timeline here, we need to right mouse click, and there's an option there for actions, or you may even have, on your view, you may have a little tab here next to output called actions. So we click on that particular layer, we go to actions, and up will come our coding screen. Now, the code I'm going to share with you, you won't be able to copy and paste because that would might throw the formatting out. So it's very important that you copy the code, sort of not just word for word, character for character. If you change how it looks in any way, shape, or form, code is very specific. Spaces can mean things. Semicolons, brackets, all these things, full stops, they mean things. So if you don't do it exactly as it's written in the code, it will fail on you. It'll give you an error message. So the first line of code that you have there is stop, and then 2 brackets and a semicolon. That's basically saying all that flashing we were doing before, just stop that. I'll tell you how to run this program. Okay. And our next line of code is start with a capital S. So now we're sort of telling the software what happens, what that start button does. And we're putting in here a add event listener, which is basically telling the program to listen out for an event. And what event we're telling it to listen out for is a mouse event. Now these add event listener and mouse event, these are JavaScript terms. So the computer already understands what these particular terms mean. And what mouse event are we listening out for? We're listening out for a click of mouse. All right. And when it does that, we want it to do stuff. Now, notice how I use the capital S for stuff. Now what we need to do is we need to tell the computer what doing stuff means. So we're going to define that function. So the function do stuff, right, we first of all we specify what it is, and it's a mouse event. So it's an event mouse event, and we close our brackets, and that's going to bring that little line in above here. This will bring in this import this flash event mouse event. The computer knows to the software knows to bring it in. And now what we do next is we define what happens when that goes on. So if we used shift and the square bracket, we'll get those funny looking brackets that look like that. And we press enter, and it'll automatically put a closing in there. So everything that we do inside those brackets has to start with an opening bracket and close with an ending bracket. So it's put that in there for us. So what we want to do is say, when this happens, we want to go to end stop. In other words, we want it to go to this screen and we want it to stop there. All right, it's one event, and that event is scene 1, which is the name of your scene with your drum kit on it. Now, if you've given your drum kit scene a different name, or if, for instance, you started by creating the landing screen first, you may have your scene 2 maybe your drum kit, and your scene 1 maybe your landing screen. So whatever you've called your drum kit scene needs to go in between those individual inverted commas. All right. So that's all the code we need to do, but it is exceptionally important that we do it absolutely correctly. Because an extra space in somewhere, or a missing dot or a missing semicolon, we're going to have some issues. And there's a fair chance that when I run this, I'm going to have an issue. Most times we have to, the reason why we test is to debug, is to find the problems. So if I close that now, I can just close that by pressing a little X, and you'll notice now above my start button, there's these little, they're very hard to see on here, but there's a little blue indication saying that there's some code attached to that button. So now when I go to test, I don't anymore have to go to test scene. I can go back to this old test button we were using before, and that should create a movie where we open to our landing screen. And you can see when I put my mouse over it, it brings up like a hyperlink style cursor. So what that's telling us is there's something that happens when we click that. All right, and if I click that, bam, I move to my drum screen, and my drum screen should still work. So that silly noise is still there. All right. So, and there is, because we told it to go to and stop, there's no ability to go from this screen back to that landing screen while we're using that software. All right. So when it's installed on Joe Drumshaven's website, we're not going to go back to the landing screen now. We're now on the screen that it's going to stop on. And that's everything you need to do to get that going. So very important, like I said, consistently labeling the button so that it's, in all cases, both the button name, the instance name, and the layer name have the same name, and they're all called start with a capital S. And once again, just pulling up that to get up the actions. You may have an actions tab there. If you don't, right mouse click on the timeline, choose actions, and when we bring this information, bring this code in, we're going to have to bring it in exactly as it's laid out for you on Google Classroom. So have a go at that and see how you go.